Hi everyone, my name's Wendy Trevathan and welcome to my podcast called Your Nurse Voice Matters. And I've got the beautiful Toni Simpson with me here today, I can't wait to dive into Toni's story. Welcome, Toni.
Thanks, Wendy. And hi, everyone listening and watching.
Yeah, beautiful. So I met Toni many years ago on the Gold Coast when we worked together, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to her sharing her story with us all. So let me give you a little bit of background on Toni's career. So Toni trained as a registered nurse at the Goulburn Base Hospital, New South Wales, graduating in 1982. She has since worked in community health, residential aged care, women's health, palliative care, public health, and the acute hospital system. Toni's passion for elder care has been long-standing, beginning with a certificate in gerontology obtained in 1990 and enhanced when she graduated as a nurse practitioner aged care in February 2008. Toni is proud to be the first nurse practitioner specialising in aged care and delirium who worked within the acute hospital system. Her research interests include staff knowledge of patient-centred care and how this affects health outcomes for hospitalised patients who are living with dementia. Toni's final years as a nurse practitioner were in the community-based Nurse Practitioner Dementia Outreach Service on the Gold Coast, Queensland. When Toni resigned from Queensland Health in 2021, she worked as an NDIS support worker, primarily living with people living with younger onset dementia. Although Toni has since retired in 2023, she remains committed to changing culture in the healthcare system and always putting the patient at the centre of her care. Her long-term advocacy for patients living with dementia is well recognised locally. Toni is a consumer representative on her local primary health network, End of Life Care Working Party, and is a founding committee member for a Death Expo planned for October 2025. That's exciting. Toni's other passions include walking, reading, and being with her 5 beautiful grandchildren. What a run sheet.
Thanks,
And
Wendy.
and I think I was involved with, we were talking before we started, back in, maybe 2007, 2008, towards the end of your nurse practitioner aged care. So what I generally ask all of the nurses that come on here today that it's got an extensive run list of expertise as you have, is to cast your mind way back to when it all began, when you were a fresh young person wanting to do nursing, what actually inspired you to become a nurse?
Well, it was something that interested me from a young age. I just think the helping people, I always sort of seemed to enjoy doing that. I was the eldest of 4 children, and so Mum always said, I was her helper and assistant. And yeah, I wanted to learn more about medical, the body and how things worked. And yeah, and nursing just seemed the likely way to go. And of course, back then it was a very pretty much female dominated, almost first choice, nursing or teaching.
Mm,
But yeah, I wasn't forced into it at all. I was
no.
happy with my choice, and I was a hospital trained as the bioreflex
Mm.
all
Like
those
all
hundreds of
those
years
years
ago.
ago, I'm looking
Yes,
at 1982 and I started in 1986. So I'm
yes,
not, I'm
not
not
long
far
after.
behind you. It's all
No,
back in that era of hats and skirts and stockings
yes.
and all that sort of thing.
Mm.
So what were the impressionable years for you as a junior RN? Was anything, do you have any memories or anything maybe
Oh,
perhaps a
yes.
bit humorous that you'd like to share with
Yeah, there's
us?
a few. I mean, you remember the charge nurses, they were called then, rather than nurse unit managers, and certainly the ones who were inspiring leaders and um, just had a way about them of teaching and maybe re-educating you if you'd made a mistake, but without making you feel silly. And yeah, so there were a lot of those. And then, of course, there were also the ones you would never want to be like, that you were like, could not understand their way of screaming in the middle of the corridor and yelling at young student nurses. I particularly remember a time it was in the 6-bed wards were still big in vogue, and I was going around on the afternoon shift in those days. You went around and did the observations and talked to the patients, and I was doing that. And I got up to about 3 beds, and a visitor called me over to another bed and asked me how long I'd been nursing for, and I said 6 months, and she said, "Oh, you're never going to succeed," and I was a bit taken aback. "Oh, why is that?" "Well, you're far too nice. You're too kind. That's just not going to happen." So yeah, so can't get rid of it. Sorry, Wendy.
That's all right.
Sorry, everyone watching. There we go. Yeah, so I was a bit puzzled over that, and that thought's come to me a lot over the years. It's still come occasionally. I think of it now, thinking, "Oh, well, I proved them wrong, didn't I?" Compassion, you can be compassionate and kind and still succeed, but they really felt I needed to be bossier and more the traditional nurse back in those times. Um, yeah, lots of funny pan room. All of us nurses of this era have lots of funny pan room stories and setting things up for other nurses. But particularly the leaders, I think, and they, over the years, going back to that hospital training, I'd often think of it too, in particular, of those charge nurses who kept me on track to be a better person and walk in their shoes.
Mm. They really connected with you, didn't you? The ones that were generally interested in you as a person and not
Yes,
so much of the task of the day. They took an
exactly. Yeah.
extra level
They knew
interest.
you had a background out of nursing. They took that into account. They did a good roster. Yeah, they were fair with their rostering too, so it wasn't everyone getting, the same horrible shifts. And yeah, as I said, you could watch them with their way of communicating with other staff and myself, and it was just, and patients, I guess, patients and relatives, and it was a very good communication style that I learned a lot from.
And it's a change because the old charge nurses, they were clinical experts in their field. Like they knew they had their finger on the pulse in their ward areas clinically as well as managing. And yeah, I just feel, they spent more time on the wards rather than being in meetings or in their office
Right, they did. They
doing
seemed to be
things.
visual, didn't they?
They
Yeah,
were they were very
yeah,
present. You had to look over
yes.
your shoulder because they'd be
They would
standing
do
right behind you.
exactly. Yes, yes.
So tell me about like your evolution towards the path where we met. It was in, working with the aged care and with dementia. How did that unravel for you?
So I think we met when I was the nurse unit manager of the ward, wasn't I? Yeah.
Yes.
So that sort of came from community. I got into community health fairly early in my nursing. I was doing different wards, surgical and medical, back still in Goulburn, and hadn't really found a niche, but I was called on regulatory leave in community health. And then a role came up in community health and Coffs Harbour, actually. So we left Goulburn and went to Coffs Harbour, and I was successful in that position. And I think because in that role you mostly saw the elderly, it just, I got a lot of satisfaction. I just felt they were very, the patients were really interesting and really good teachers. And because it's a bit of, I don't like to say community health is a slower pace, but back then the registered nurses were doing the showers. So we all know as a nurse, you get to know the person so well when they're in the nude and you're showering them. And yeah, I learned a lot about them. So that's where my love started. And that, because I was still in New South Wales, I think it was called the Royal College of Nursing, or New South Wales College of Nursing did a gerontology certificate, and that's that one that mentioned in my bio. So that was a really big thing for me to go away for 16 weeks. My kids were only young, and hubby had to take a lot of time off work to balance all of that. But what I actually started learning some real nitty-gritty things about the body systems and how things change as we age. I really knew I could get my teeth into this. So um, the position, I was working in Toowoomba I'd moved from Coffs Harbour to Toowoomba, still in the community, but very much with the aged care focus, a bit more of a management focus. And the position came up as the charge nurse unit manager on the aged care ward, which was where you met me, Wendy. And that was very different from me because I'd been out of the hospital for so long. So it was such a strange to me, way of thinking, the way hospital nurses think compared to how we, the community, think, which it really is all the same. But I remember way back then trying to get a rotating system so we'd go through all, and it was never ever able to get off the ground. But I always had thought that would be a good idea, and that we would support, nurses would support each other more if they knew, that community isn't a laxaday's job. It can be just as busy and stressful and long hours, a different way than working in the wards.
Mm.
So yeah, long answer, but that's how I got to
To
being the
come
nurse.
into the
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I often wondered it'd be nice to wave a magic wand and have all of those opportunities just unravel for the benefit of everybody.
Yeah.
I remember dreaming big, thinking in when I worked in Townsville oncology, wouldn't it be nice if all the nurses could rotate through the oncology day unit, the oncology ward, and then out into radiation oncology so they could actually get the scope of all three areas. And I
Yes.
think you're probably describing a vision there
Mm.
from community so that people can understand the other side of
Yeah.
what's beyond the walls and
Yes. How
what's in
different it is.
within the walls and
Yeah.
yeah,
Some the patient.
have that appreciation that we are working as a wider team.
Yes, yes, the team's what it's all about. Yeah. So although I wasn't, that working in the hospital wasn't what I wanted, that ended up being a wonderfully exciting time of my career.
Mm.
I ended up with an amazing team on board. We had people on the wait list to come and work in that ward. And when I first started there, it wasn't like that. It had a reputation, that was where you got sent if sort of the dregs of nursing, which was absolutely terrible. And we had allied health, and even down to the cleaner. It was constant, it was continuity. Everyone loved working there. We were part of a big team, and it was absolutely wonderful. It really was very a stressful time. I tried so hard with the rosters, and they were almost always done in my own time, but just to so the staff could have work-life balance. And I think well, they did. They appreciated that and thanked me for it. Yeah.
Mm. It's good to get that feedback. And I remember the feel of your ward at the time. Like
Mm,
you were welcome there. Everyone was, yes, they were busy and hectic, but everyone was working with a smile in their face. And, you got that sense of this is a good place to
mm,
work. Mm.
mm.
So tell me how did you come to be to look at the path of becoming a nurse practitioner?
Well, that's a bit of a story too. So the ward was at the old Gold Coast Hospital, and we got moved to Robina, and I think that was maybe when we
Mm.
moved out of each other's lives, Wendy.
Mm.
And the Robina ward was fabulous for an aged care, and lots of patients living with dementia, because it just was more like home, which worried the management a lot because they thought we wouldn't discharge people, but we actually had a higher discharge rate down there because we had such a wonderful relationship with the directors of nursing at the nursing home. So everything was going great and it was all looking good. And the ward had to be closed for some other wards to decant to up at the main Gold Coast Hospital while they were refurbished. So the ward closed and for 3 months, but of course it never opened. So I was put in a temporary position, and in that time frame, now again we cast our mind back. Not the Prime Minister, the Premier at the time was
Mm.
married to a nurse who
Mm.
said to him, and there was a lot of issues with health. She was an academic, and she said to him it was pillow talk, what about getting nurse practitioners into our health system? I think that'd make a huge difference. So, of course, it went through everything that it had to go to, and a whole lot of scholarships were offered. So I was encouraged by my director of nursing, Paul Cashel, to apply for the scholarship for the nurse practitioner. And he said, would you do it in aged care? So I had to sort of prove what gap there was in our health service, which at the time, and still is across the world really, delirium, the care of older people with delirium, is not evidence-based. So I had to put all that on paper and apply, and was successful. I said, yes, this will work. And yeah, then had the 2 years of study. And because I was in that different job between the two hospitals, it sort of went well with it. So I was allocated a geriatrician, or geriatrician was allocated me, I'm not sure. Yeah, and it went from there. And yeah, I was able to do 4 days a week clinical work with elderly patients and working on the delirium and all the things that come along with that, urinary retention, constipation, etc., medications particularly, while I was learning what it would take to be a nurse practitioner and studying hard and doing lots of exams and assignments and things.
Who did you study your nurse practitioner through? Which university?
Oh, QUT,
QUT.
Queensland
Yeah,
University of
because that's where
Technology.
I started as well. Yeah.
Yeah, we were the first
Yep.
lot that they did, so we were sort of the guinea pigs.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it was all new and
it
exciting, and
was. It was
it
very
was
different
just
and
breaking
scary.
and scary, looking at boundaries, looking at regulations and rules for everybody. Yeah.
Yes.
So what would have been one of the highlights for you going through that process for you?
Oh, well, I guess I got to know a broad range of other nurses from different backgrounds. I developed strong friendships we had two respiratory CNCs studying with me and a chronic kidney disease CNC and two ladies from the emergency department, although they did it in the 1 year. We did it, the rest of us did over 2 years. But to learn about their backgrounds and how their roles worked was really good. And they said the same with me. We all became very close. Um, the actual learning, just understanding things like pharmacology was fascinating. It was so hard. It was really, really hard. I struggled with it. A lot of other people did really well, but
Mm,
it was a tough subject. But it taught us things that as nurses we really all needed to know anyway. So that was that was certainly a highlight and a memory. Um, yeah, learning about work-life balance, learning that you had to give up a lot of your social life while you studied. But yeah, and getting to know the geriatricians more, I have to say, and probably consultants and their teams from all different
and the
backgrounds because
others.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'd have to add in there that well supported by all of them, along this whole journey. It's never been a medical person who's had an issue with me as a nurse practitioner.
Mm.
I've only worked with Queensland Health. I know my colleagues in private, it can be different, but yeah, certainly well supported by all the doctors for sure.
That's awesome. I do remember the doctors that you worked with and at the time. Yeah.
They're pretty special. Yeah.
Very, very special people. Yes. So tell me what happened after that time. Like you said that you resigned from Queensland Health in 21 and then worked as an NDIS support worker. Um, what was that transition like for you to move? Yeah.
It was pretty tough.
Mm,
Um, because as an NDIS support worker, obviously I'm wearing that hat as a support worker, which is sort of similar in out to an assistant in nursing.
mm,
And a lot of the clients I was supporting, I felt the medications were often not helpful. But I couldn't wear that hat, but I could advocate for the person and talk to they were all had a husband, a wife, a partner.
mm,
So I was able to sort of suggest to them some ideas to talk to their GP about, or um, some of them were struggling with GPs, not able to find GPs, only couldn't get into the same one. And it was absolutely amazing on the Gold Coast. There is a nurse practitioner who works in private in a GP practice. She actually owns the GP practice and works with other GPs. So I was able to refer a couple of them to her who they really clicked with, and that was really helpful. But yeah, it was just getting used to not.
bit of a role kind of switch, isn't it?
It
And
is a
changing and
yeah.
being very diplomatic about that and staying within boundaries, I would
Yes,
imagine.
yes, and a lot more
Yes,
physical too, I was
yes,
an older
yes,
woman. I was 61.
yes.
Um, and yeah, so you're bending down and helping with showers and toileting and all that sort of stuff. So that was interesting for me. I needed to get a bit fitter, but very wonderfully satisfying work and
Mm,
true close professional relationships with the clients made.
mm.
Yeah, no, it was
And
good.
what about the clientele? Like you mentioned here that it was younger onset dementia. That would be a um, different way of nursing dementia. Were there anything different that you had to sort of pick up as
Um,
far as skill was concerned?
I guess so, because I've been so involved in have nurse-run memory clinics. So I
Yeah.
was quite involved in helping with the diagnosis of people with younger onset dementia. It was good to see how what they were told, and none of the particular residents, clients I was supporting were in my memory clinics. They'd been diagnosed more recently. But it was good to see how they were going post-diagnosis and to learn what they or their husbands, partners had been told about the diagnosis, and 6 months down the track, how they'd sort of either forgotten all of that or had gone into a blur. So yeah, I was able to sort of guide just resources like obviously Dementia Australia is a fabulous one that they had actually forgotten that they'd been given out information, or they were given so much information at the start that it had just all been thrown into a drawer. Another big thing that I should have probably mentioned back early in my career, I've always, when COVID was here, we nurse practitioners in Queensland were encouraged to do advanced health directives with patients and families. And after COVID, the legislation changed, so nurse practitioners can still do that. So that's sort of quite unique to our state. So I've been very passionate about that. So I was able to talk to the client I was supporting as well as their partners about the importance of getting that advanced health directive filled in. And of course, again, they generally had it in the drawer. It had been given to them in a big bundle of information post-diagnosis, but they didn't really understand what it was. So, as you know, even though I was not an NP, working as an NP, I could guide them to fill it in and then go off to their GP and get it signed off and registered with the Office of Advanced Care Planning. So yeah, that's probably a big example, a good one.
Yeah, I remember when that initiative started, probably 10 years prior, 20, no, 15 years prior to that.
Mm.
You know, it was a real big awakening for
Yeah,
everybody and a
yes,
real different mindset shift to be starting to thinking about that earlier than when it's necessary. And what a wonderful, way to open up those discussions with the families around future care planning. Yeah.
yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
So tell me, since you've retired, you've still remained active in the community. What activities that you're involved with bring you joy? And can you describe, what that joy means to you? What's involved with that?
Sure. Well, on the advanced health directives, I live in a over 50s resort. Many people like to call it a retirement village, but yes, it's not a nursing home or anything. It's and where independent older people live. So I found that a lot of people here vaguely know about it, advanced health directives, but haven't done any more. So I've done 2 monthly sessions since we moved in 20 months ago. Um, I get about 12 people each time, and this, as we all know, YouTube's got some wonderful things. So using Advanced Health Directive, Advanced Care Planning Australia, put up some little things, and then we talk about it, and we go through a dummy or a pretend Advanced Health Directive, and then the people go home, and some of them choose to get me to come around for a coffee, help with the wording of it, and then the same thing, off they go to their GP and get them signed off. And they're so grateful that it's done, because I say it's been niggling away at me. So that's one thing I do a lot of. When any particular themes are, so March is Advanced Health Planning Month, so I'll do a big one in that one. I'll do it. I've got a lot of passion around First Nations people and the gaps we still have in healthcare and in lots of other areas. So I'm very involved. There's a Toowoomba First Nations Allies group that meets monthly. I'm very involved in that, and I do a lot of awareness raising here where I live. And there was no book club here. So being an avid reader, I've had great delight in getting a book club set up. And yeah, that's amazing that we have about 12 to 14 come to that, just to hear the different books people like to read or they think they won't like it. And then they'll say, oh, all right, I'll try it. And they come back next time. So, oh, that book was so good. I'm so glad you recommended it and that I liked it.
Oh,
And I've
that's
got a little
wonderful.
dog, so I'm busy with dog park people as well. And it's amazing the nursing type talk you can have down at the dog park to people.
Oh, that's wonderful. It sounds like you're really enjoying your life after retirement and still giving back to the community, which is wonderful. Yeah, for the listeners and the watchers out there, any aspiring nurses, what would be one key thing of words of wisdom from Toni that you'd like to impart?
I think listening to our patients or clients can never be too small. I really think it's so important having that pause, hearing what they say, having that pause, maybe paraphrasing it. We so often are busy, so busy in our work, and we're just task orientated, and we forget that that patient actually has something to say or what they might want. And that particularly probably relates to people having a whole lot of tests and investigations in hospital, the older person usually, who doesn't really want it, but they just don't know. They can't seem to get in a word to say no. So I think being an advocate is about listening to your patient, and we are our patients' advocates. So yeah, I
Mm.
could give a few more, but that's the big one, Wendy.
Yeah, I think so. I agree with you. I don't think we listen enough, and I think
Mm,
our world is getting busier and busier, and
mm,
the ones that actually go through our healthcare smoothly are the ones that have, for the staff that have actually taken the time to listen, because
yes,
it can prevent a whole lot of um,
miscommunication.
misinformation, and anxiety,
Mm,
which snowballs. It tends to
yes,
snowball. So
that's right.
taking that extra, I call it the extra 15 minutes, can
Yeah,
invest a day or two.
that will. They'll be discharged sooner and everything. Yeah, 100% agree.
Yeah, awesome. Well, it's been beautiful having you, Toni. Lovely to see your smiley, happy face again after all this time. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. Any last words that you'd like to impart?
Mm, just don't forget your allied health team either, nurses. They're amazing. We're all on the same page. We all want the best for our patient and our resident. And yeah, there's enough work for all of us. There's no competition, and they'll help our day and teach, and of course we can teach them too, and that includes pharmacists. Pharmacists, oh, they're great, especially for nurse practitioners. But yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Great. Beautiful,
Thanks,
Toni.
Wendy.
You're more than welcome. So you've been listening to Your Nurse Voice Matters. I look forward to talking to you on our next episode.